If you are seeing this, the Arcturians have already found you. That sentence lands heavier than it looks. It is not a metaphor. It is not a feel-good platitude. It is a report. Something in your vibrational field lit up a lattice that watches patterns, and that lattice turned its attention toward your signature. Right now, in this very minute, that shift, subtle, electric, unmistakable to their way of sensing, has opened a tiny doorway between what you have been and what you are becoming. Feel into your body for a moment. Notice the place behind your brow, at the center of your head. Do you feel a slight pressure or a soft ringing? Do your palms tingle? Maybe there is a warmth settling through your chest, like someone pressing a hand there to say, "We see you." Those are not accidents. Those are the markers of detection. Optional. If you want to stabilize this moment for yourself, type exactly this phrase in the comments now. I am ready to be seen. This is optional. It's a tiny, practical anchor. It does not guarantee anything, and experiences will vary. Use it only if it feels right to you. When I say they've found you, I don't mean they're watching you with eyes. They read patterns. They read coherence. Their telemetry is frequency, not biography. They do not catalog your resume, your excuses, or your pain story. They map the shape of your presence. Is your heart and mind aligned, even for a second? Is your inner tone steady, or does it jitter between wanting and being? That is the information that lit their lattice. You have probably felt the first signals of that attention already. Most people do not recognize them as contact because they are subtle, woven into the everyday. Let me name what you might have noticed so you can validate your experience. A phone rings just as you think a name. A dream arrives that leaves you with an instruction or an image that haunts your waking. Time bends. Minutes stretch. Hours collapse. You find yourself late for something that never happened, or you remember an afternoon that others don't recall the same way. People appear or depart in your life with a speed that feels uncanny. Someone shows up to offer exactly what you needed, or someone exits as if to reset the space. You feel sudden pressure behind your eyes, a humming in your ears, a tingle at the base of your skull. Small synchronistic arrows begin to puncture what you assumed was randomness. I remember a listener who wrote to me. She was sitting at a cafe, thinking of an old mentor she hadn't spoken to in years. At the precise second the memory hit, a vibration in her pocket announced a text. It was the mentor, unrelated to anything she'd done, unaware she'd been thinking of them, and the message was a single line, "Are you okay?" She felt afterward like the world had briefly rearranged to answer her thought. That is a small example, but it is the kind of confirmation that a lattice recognizes, pattern meeting pattern and responding.
These signs are validation. They are not always dramatic. In fact, the Arcturians prefer subtlety. They are architects of resonance. They note micro-coherence and choose windows to engage. Which brings us to the thing they are hiding. They are hiding strategy. Not secrecy for secrecy's sake, not a cloak of malice, but deliberate discretion. Why? Because their method depends on thresholds. When a human field reaches a certain coherence, when inner alignment, attention, and sustained presence overlap, an opening becomes stable enough to hold a new frequency. The Arcturians have learned that overt disclosure collapses that delicate state, so they work in stages. Detect, test, seed, then amplify through human nodes who can hold the frequency on Earth. That is the essence of the new plan. Before we get to the plan, you need to grasp the mechanism. This is the part that is simple but not easy to do in practice. They read what you are, not what you want. Wanting creates a directional vector, a projection of desire into the future. Being is a condition of present coherence that shifts the immediate field. When you are being the frequency you wish to inhabit, calm, sure, embodied, the lattice reflects that as an updated map. When your inner narrative is busy replaying fear or longing, the lattice registers noise. This is why so many techniques that work in short bursts feel ephemeral. They change behavior, not state. Think of coherence like the pitch of a tuning fork. If you strike the fork once, a note rings briefly. If you sustain that note, it creates a standing wave in the room. The Arcturians respond to standing waves. They can hear the difference between a single courageous act and a life lived in consonance. Their interventions, those tiny synchronistic corrections, the accelerated timelines, are focused where standing waves are forming. Here's another concrete pattern you probably recognize. When your inner elements align, when your heart is quiet, your mind clear, and your body present, people nearby begin to behave as if your preferences already exist. Conversations shift toward the topics you've been holding. Opportunities seem to congeal, and the right supports show up. Those are not wishful thinking. They are resonance effects within a responsive system. The lattice reads that as a candidate for a threshold window. Now, a practical, optional exercise to anchor you here. This is not a medical procedure and not a promise. It is a simple coherence check you can do wherever you are. Sit comfortably, feel the weight of your feet on the floor. Take one natural breath, no force, just noticing. Bring your attention to the center line of your body, the line that runs from the top of your head to your tailbone. Imagine for a moment that your attention is a low, steady frequency traveling down that line. If you are listening, you might notice a small settling inside. You can, silently to yourself, repeat the phrase, "I am present, coherent, now."
This is an optional phrase. Results vary. Some people will feel nothing. Others will feel an immediate softening, a small tilt in their internal weather. Neither outcome is a judgment. The point is to practice aligning state, not to manufacture an experience. Why have so many practices felt like temporary fixes? Because they treat the symptom, the anxious mind, the scattered attention, without inviting the whole system to reorganize. You can do breathwork, visualizations, gratitude lists, all of which are useful. But if your body still carries tension, or your mind insists on replaying a story about lack, coherence won't hold. Authenticity is the shortcut. When your external behavior and your internal truth match, when you are not pretending to be calm while terror is flooding you, the system requires far less energy to remain aligned. Authenticity isn't a moral test, it's an energetic one. It's easier to be coherent when you allow the true texture of your experience to have space. Grief without shame, joy without guilt, curiosity without the compulsion to explain. When you do that, the field settles faster. Being becomes the path. Wanting becomes a support, not the driver. This is precisely what the Arcturians are watching for. They are not interested in polished personas. They are gravitating toward fields that can hold complexity with clarity. You don't have to be perfect. You do have to be honest. Now lean in a little further with me. They are shifting strategy. Up until recently, detection was more scattered. Occasional nudges, tests sent into the field, a handful of people given larger transmissions. The new plan is to concentrate. Think of it as moving from broadcasting random beacons to building a durable grid. Instead of only touching isolated individuals, the lattice is seeking human nodes that can hold and amplify coherence across communities. Those nodes will be intentional hubs, people who practice inner alignment, who form supportive fields around one another, who can sustain weekly coherence and thereby extend the reach of any given window. You might be thinking, why would they need human nodes? Why not just hold the field themselves? Because on Earth, matter and consciousness are knitted by bodies. Human nervous systems anchor frequencies into local ecologies, families, neighborhoods, digital communities. The Arcturians can seed impulses, but sustaining the tone here requires local custodians, people who are committed, not merely momentarily aligned. That is the practical, strategic part of their hidden plan. They are choosing discretion so that the incubation happens in human habitats rather than being imposed from above. This is where things can feel personal. Being detected means you are a candidate for recruitment into that grid, not because you are special in the ego sense, but because your field has begun to resonate in a way that could anchor others. That changes the stakes of small choices.
It doesn't mean you must join anything. It does mean that your inner practice now carries outsized influence. A pause in coherence on your part might dampen a budding window. A sustained presence from you might amplify it. That is why the lattice is being strategic rather than ostentatious. Let me be clear, this is not coercion. The Arcturians are not dictating your life. They are offering a pattern. You are free to accept the pattern, test it, ignore it, or walk away. I will say this plainly. Windows are limited. By that I mean thresholds. Those moments when the lattice is willing to lean in are not infinite. They are time-bound and contingent on local coherence. But limited is not the same as final. It is simply an invitation to decide in a finite tempo. You always have agency. You will notice additional signs if this pattern is intensifying around you. The feeling that you are on a timeline that accelerates, sudden alignments that defy explanation, the sensation of a doorway brushing your shoulder in a crowded room. At a more subtle level, the lattice will test your boundaries. You might feel pressure to be more honest with people, to prioritize different projects, to change the way you spend your time. Those are not manipulation, they are calibration. At this point, you may be asking, what does that change for me, practically? How do you move from passive recognition to practical embodiment of this new phase? The first pivot is learning to cultivate a stable inner reference point. Most people use desire as the reference point. Desire points you forward. It helps mobilize resources, but it is inconsistent because desire is reactive to every new image. An inner reference point is different. It is a felt minimum, your center of gravity, that you return to regardless of circumstances. Practice that center. Invite your nervous system to learn that the default is not excitement or dread, but a steady, observant presence. Second, practice small, sustained rituals that keep you in the field without dramatizing the effect. These are ordinary things done with extraordinary consistency. A 2-minute morning check-in that aligns breath, heart, and focus. A walk where your attention follows your feet for 10 minutes. A weekly small gathering with people who do the same. Rituals signal to the lattice that you can hold a frequency over time. They are not magic spells. They are training protocols. Third, allow your authenticity to be visible in small ways. If you are surrounded by people who expect you to perform who you have always been, experiment with one honest statement this week. Observe the feedback. Often, being more you creates the space for others to be more themselves, and coherence spreads like that, by permission, not imperial decree. There will be resistance. Old stories will try to reassert themselves. You will find moments where wanting reappears and pulls you into anxious projection. That is normal.
The difference now is that the lattice is watching how you respond to those pulls. Do you return to your center? Do you bunker down? Do you collapse into old patterns? Every response informs the next window. An important cautionary note while we are here: none of this replaces professional care. If you are in therapy, on medication, managing chronic conditions, keep your team close. These activations and practices are complementary. They can support your inner work, but they are not medical or legal substitutes. Results vary widely. Be prudent. There is a deeper dynamic I want to name, because it is at the heart of what the Arcturians are hiding. They are less interested in your narrative than in your capacity to hold a new tone. In human terms, that often translates into a paradox. The more you stop trying to fix the story, the more the story begins to fix itself. When you create coherence internally, circumstances begin to reconfigure around that coherence. People change, opportunities align. Yet the change is not external magic. It is the systemic response to a new gravitational center in you. You may have felt this before in small ways: an argument dissolving once you stop fueling it, a plan unfolding when you stop behaving like a frantic director, a relationship shifting when you allow the truth to breathe. Those are local echoes of the same principle. Now I want to give you another, slightly more technical way to visualize their operation, because metaphor helps the nervous system orient. Imagine a 3-layer map. The lowest layer is the local story field: memories, social scripts, daily obligations. The middle layer is your somatic field, how your body holds tension, where you carry shame or lightness, your habitual posture in life. The top layer is coherence pattern, the integrated signal that emerges when the body, heart, and mind sing the same note. The Arcturian lattice scans the top layer primarily. It uses the middle and lower layers to validate and predict stability. When the top layer sings strongly, the lattice will send small harmonics into the field to test receptivity. If the human nodes around you reflect those harmonics, if they are practicing similar alignment, the harmonic locks in and the doorway widens. That explains why group coherence matters. Individual practice matters, yes, but collective nodes amplify the signal in a multiplier fashion. A single tuning fork venerated is one thing. 3 tuning forks in phase create a standing wave that can move furniture. The new plan, quietly, is to seed human clusters who can maintain phase. You may be tempted to ask, who gets chosen? There is no cosmic VIP list. The lattice chooses on the basis of capacity: capacity for sustained alignment, capacity for honest presence, capacity for emotional containment, and on the basis of momentum. If you have been practicing inner work consistently, even in small ways, those micro-investments compound.
If you have been doing nothing, that does not mean you are excluded. It means the lattice may seed you with smaller tests first. Here is another anchor to practice, again optional and brief. Sit comfortably, place one hand lightly over your heart and the other on your belly. Breathe gently. Feel the pulse under your hand. If it is there, rest your attention there for a single breath. Then, silently, state to yourself, I notice my center. I return here. You are not pledging anything. You are simply training your attention to find a stable reference. This is a mid-game skill for anyone who wants to navigate the doorway. As the plan unfolds, expect the tempo of certain events to accelerate. Not everything will speed up. Some cycles will stretch unnaturally long, others will compress into moments. You may find yourself at forks where the right move is simply to be present and wait, holding coherence without hasty action. Patience has become a practical tool because the lattice is sensitive to premature attempts to force outcomes. I should name the ethical contour here. The Arcturians do not demand blind faith. They are pragmatic. They prefer people who test, who experiment, who retain curiosity. They are less impressed by devotion and more by adaptability. Your skepticism is not a disqualifier. Your capacity to learn from results is what matters. At this point, the question the title asks, "What are the Arcturians hiding?" starts to resolve into something clearer. They are hiding a scaffolding. They are building an infrastructure of human coherence that will not be obvious at first glance, because infrastructure must be invisible to function. Roads, plumbing, electrical grids, those are only seen when they fail. Similarly, the Arcturians are orchestrating a quiet scaffolding of nodes that, when woven together, will enable more consistent windows of accelerated change. That phrase, "will change everything," is not hyperbole in the technical sense. It is a conditional projection. If enough nodes anchor coherence, then collective patterns can shift cultural norms, accelerate healing modalities, and reconfigure local ecologies around new frequencies. If that sounds grand, remember, grand shifts are the cumulative effect of millions of small alignments turned persistent. The Arcturians are betting on the power of patient, disciplined human field building. You may be asking, will you be asked to pay for this? The short answer is, human nodes need organization and resources to sustain practice, time, facilitation, community management. Where human structures are necessary, payment or membership sometimes appears as a pragmatic solution to support the work. That does not make it coercive, it makes it functional. When I speak later about the operational components of their plan, the human grids, the weekly activations, the private nodes, understand that these are designed to offer sustained support, not to be the only path. But those details come ahead.
Right now, the immediate work is to notice whether your field is indeed a candidate. Ask yourself, honestly, have my synchronicities increased? Do my dreams arrive with clarity? Have small alignments begun to ripple? If yes, you are in an early window. There will be tests. One of the recurring tests is the temptation to explain too quickly. Explanation collapses nuance. The lattice is attuned to whether you rush to a story or whether you allow the phenomenon to remain present without immediate labeling. Curiosity wins over certainty here. Hold more questions than answers. Track results, not fables. I want to be plain about the posture to adopt if you feel the pressure of detection. First, prioritize presence. Second, keep humility. Your observations are data, not proof of specialness. Third, steward your relationships. When a doorway opens, people around you react in their own ways. Some will be curious, others defensive. Practice simple compassion. You are not required to convert anyone. You are invited to be an honest node. There is another practical element in their strategy that is important to name. Invitations will come in forms that often look like ordinary opportunities. A call to teach, a chance conversation that turns into a collaboration, an email about joining a modest group. Those invitations are not always accompanied by cosmic fanfare. They slip into the fabric of your life and test whether you will accept the work of being a node. Regular practice, occasional facilitation, and the willingness to show up for the field. At the edge of this conversation, I need to emphasize a human truth. Holding a field is not glamorous. It is often mundane, repetitive, and quietly demanding of integrity. The Arcturians understand that. Their plan is to seed people who can do the daily labor of coherence without needing applause. That is the friction point for many seekers who are drawn initially to dramatic experiences. There is a lot more to say about how the lattice amplifies through technology-free spaces, about the specific kinds of cohort practices that create ripple effects, about the ethics of consent when fieldwork expands, but this is where I will pause for a moment and hand you back to your body. Notice what changed while you listened. Did your chest move differently? Did your attention narrow to something specific? The doorway may be a whisper now. It may be a draft. No matter the scale, you are at a threshold. A threshold is not an event. It is a relationship between who you are and who you might be. It requires a decision, but not a frantic one. It asks for steadiness. Soon I will explain how the Arcturians' new plan manifests in human structures, what a node looks like in practice,
what support you can expect from a community designed to hold frequency, and how to recognize a genuine field from a superficial group.
I will also guide you through a small commitment activation that will serve as a marker should you choose to step forward. For now, choose to do 3 simple things in the next 24 hours. Notice any synchronistic events without overinterpreting them. Practice a 2-minute daily return to center using the hand-on-heart anchor, and remain curious. Keep a small notebook. Record phenomena without conclusion. That log will be your most honest dataset. The lattice is patient, but it is not indefinite in any single window. The next moves you make will inform how and when the doorway widens for you. The Arcturians are hiding their plan in plain sight by acting like teachers who prefer outcomes over spectacle. They are cultivating nodes, and those nodes need humans who will show up day after day in ordinary ways. You are being watched by a system that values steadiness. It admires authenticity. It measures coherence. And it is preparing to offer you, if you are willing, a hand in the quiet work of amplifying new possibility. There is more ahead. The specifics of that support, the structures you can join if you choose, and the precise markers the lattice looks for when it decides to deepen engagement. We will walk through that together. For now, remain present. Keep the phrase close if it served you earlier. I am ready to be seen. Keep practicing the small returns. Hold your center like a lighthouse, steady, unflashy, luminous. They are not hiding malice. They are hiding a plan, because a plan needs space to germinate. The space between now and the decision you make is where your next life will be shaped. When you step through, and only if you choose to do so, you will notice that things begin to answer you more quickly. But choosing is the sacred part. It must come from a place of steady presence, not unsettled wanting. Listen for the faint change in the air. It may feel like a pressure behind your forehead, a hum at your sternum, a quickening of breath. Those are the lattice's gentle tests, checks to see whether you will tend your interior. If you feel any of that, note it without alarm. Record it. Share it with someone you trust who understands what it means to steward frequency. The Arcturians are building a grid, and your presence, however quiet, is already part of the architecture. There is one more detail before we transition. In the coming segment, I will offer a second, deeper activation, an embodied declaration designed to align your nervous system with a threshold pattern. It will be optional, brief, and framed as a commitment, not a promise. If you intend to continue with me, prepare for that step. If not, continue only with what feels safe and sensible to you. Right now, breathe, return to your center, and listen. The lattice is attentive. The doorway is waiting. The plan is being woven in the spaces between ordinary moments.
If you have been chosen, if your field has been detected, you are being invited to a quieter kind of revolution, the work of being coherent, together. You are being watched by a system that values steadiness. It admires authenticity. It measures coherence. And it is preparing to offer you, if you are willing, a hand in the quiet work of amplifying new possibility. If you choose to move through this doorway, here is what the archetype of a human node actually looks like in practice: unromantic, practical, and quietly powerful. A node is not a celebrity or a guru. It is a person who builds routines that keep their nervous system calibrated, who gathers a small circle of others to practice holding frequency together, and who treats the commitment as mundane labor: weekly check-ins, short transmissions shared with intentionality, a communal container where people show up consistently. Imagine a handful of people who meet with the explicit aim of keeping a tone. They do basic practices, they document the effects, they hold confidentiality, and they cultivate patience. Over months, that little group becomes a resonant antenna. Over years, several such groups stitched across regions create a grid. Practically speaking, a functioning node will do 3 things habitually. First, they maintain a daily reference, a 2-minute morning recalibration, a centering phrase, the hand-on-heart check that we practiced earlier. Second, they participate in a weekly field practice, a short, consistent transmission where the same people meet to hold coherence together. Third, they steward ethical clarity. Consent is asked before larger field work, boundaries are respected, and emotional containment is practiced so personal dramas don't get amplified through the grid. These are small commitments. They are not glamorous. They are, however, effective. Because you'll ask, what does a well-run human node actually offer, technically? Let me translate that into the kind of tangible structure the Arcturians are betting on. A healthy node offers regular timing, a weekly container where people synchronize,
facilitation that keeps the practice consistent, an appointed steward or rotating facilitator, a small cohort for accountability, 5 to 25 people is the practical sweet spot, and a method for recording outcomes. These are the scaffolding elements: regular rhythm, minimal overhead, honest reporting. That is how you turn transient resonance into a standing wave. This is where a human offering, such as the member circle I will describe, becomes relevant to the plan. The Arcturians can seed impulses. They cannot babysit every local ecology forever. Human nodes need infrastructure, schedules, facilitation, onboarding, places to share live data.
The member circle is an operational design that mirrors what the lattice wants: a set of coordinated nodes with shared methods, a place for transmissions that train the nervous system, and a modest administrative backbone to keep the rhythm steady. Membership, when done well, is not a gate that denies access. It is a practical commitment to a way of working together. Here is a concrete sketch of what a responsible member circle offers, without promises or guarantees, just a description of resources. Weekly live activations led by experienced facilitators, short recorded transmissions for daily practice, guided embodiment sessions that emphasize safety and nervous system regulation, small cohort rooms for field practice and feedback, a private forum where members share phenomenology and logistics, monthly themes that build cumulative skills, and occasional advanced transmissions aimed at increasing coherence skills rather than producing instant miracles. Members may also receive logistical support, scheduling, facilitation training, and simple frameworks for running ethical fieldwork in their local communities. Those are tools, not guarantees. People sometimes worry that membership equals brainwashing or dependency. That fear is understandable. A legitimate circle invites autonomy, tests critical thinking, and discourages secrecy. In a healthy node, you are encouraged to keep your external supports, therapists, medical professionals, friends, and to consult them when major life decisions appear. Nothing in this plan asks you to abdicate judgment. The member circle is intended to be a companion, not a substitute, for the practical systems you already rely on. If you are wondering about evidence, note the difference between scientific proof and lived phenomenology. Some participants report increased consistency in their practice, more persistent calm in their day-to-day, and clearer feedback loops when they test small interventions. Those are subjective reports, varied by person and circumstance. They are not universal, and they are not promises. The lattice pays attention to cumulative, repeated behavior. A single weekend retreat rarely does the job. Sustained practice does. The operational role of a membership model is to make sustained practice more likely by creating accountability and rhythm. Now, let us address a harder question embedded in the title. If the Arcturians are hiding a plan, what is the ethics of that concealment? Why withhold a larger reveal? From their perspective, it's simple pragmatics. When large groups know too much, when a movement gets theatrical or fame-oriented, the frequency splinters. Grand announcements collapse into egoic performance, and performance fractures coherence. It's like trying to build a cathedral with people whose only interest is applause. The structure will fail. So discretion is a protective move.
The lattice keeps its larger intentions diluted into small invitations so that human nodes can form without the noise of spectacle. Think about the last time you tried to change an important habit in public. The public becomes an accelerant for insecurity. Private practice becomes sustainable. The Arcturians are betting on the slow, private climb, not a viral broadcast. That is what they are hiding: the slow work scaffolding, the quiet logistics, the human labor of consistency. If change is to be durable, it must be built by ordinary people doing ordinary acts consistently. This brings us to the threshold decision you keep feeling at the edges of your experience. The doorway will ask you not for a dramatic leap, but for an ordinary pledge: to show up, to practice, to hold your center when it matters. The Arcturians respond to cumulative fidelity. They do not require perfection. They ask for repetition. That is why the final activation I will offer now is gentle and narrow in scope. It is a marker, not a magic wand, and it is optional. If you choose to participate, place your hand over your heart, soften your shoulders, and breathe gently. Feel your hands warm against your chest. Allow your attention to fall like a small stone into a still pool. If you wish to make an optional verbal commitment to the doorway, one that signals to yourself and the field that you're willing to hold practice, say aloud or type where you keep notes this phrase exactly: I stand steady, I hold the field. That is the anchor. Use it only if it feels aligned. This phrase is not a guarantee. Experiences will vary. Use it as a personal marker of intent, not a contract with the cosmos. Note the rhythm I used: an early optional typed anchor to stabilize detection, a mid-practice phrase to calibrate your presence, and now a final commitment phrase to mark threshold crossing. 3 small anchors are all you need. They are tools to help your nervous system remember a posture, steady presence over time. You may be thinking about cost now, because human nodes require resources. In practice, maintaining reliable facilitation, hosting live sessions, and building ethical safeguards needs funding.
Membership models are one way to sustain the infrastructure. A responsible circle will be transparent about fees, offer sliding scales or scholarship options where possible, and explain how money is allocated. Facilitation time, platform costs, and administrative support. Money is a practical means to an end here. It is not the end itself. If you choose to join a circle, you should expect straightforward membership logistics, an onboarding call that outlines expectations, clear schedules for live sessions, accessible recordings, community norms, and an explicit consent process for any collective fieldwork. You should also expect the invitation to evaluate results pragmatically. Does the practice increase your steadiness? Are you having more moments of coherence? Are your local relationships responding in measurable ways? If not, you should feel empowered to leave the circle or to renegotiate the terms. Because we are all human, let me acknowledge the tension that appears when spiritual language meets practical payment. That tension is necessary. It keeps things honest. If a group asks for money but fails to offer administrative transparency or consistent facilitation, that is a red flag. If a group asks for absolute obedience, that is a red flag. If a group consistently demonstrates grounded stewardship, clear deliverables, evidence of logistics, and ethical boundaries, that is a sign of a healthy operational node. Now imagine you step into this work and you begin to find a small cluster, 5 people who meet weekly for 20 minutes and hold a simple coherence practice. Over a year, that group becomes a micro-ecosystem. A local teacher receives support to create a neighborhood practice. Someone organizes a quiet free introduction for neighbors. A local caregiver finds more margin in their life. Nothing dramatic happens overnight. After months, the lattice begins to nudge that micro-ecosystem, small synchronistic alignments, a conversation that turns into a project, a mutual support that changes a trajectory. These are the kinds of cumulative effects the Arcturians want to scale. They prefer to work through human infrastructure because it anchors in matter. It is also important to name what the lattice will not do. It will not remove your agency. It will not force a life change without consent. It will not bypass the messy, ethical, and legal realities of human living. If you are offered an opportunity that asks you to make illegal choices, to abandon obligations without planning, or to harm yourself or others, that is not the lattice speaking. Those are human misuses of spiritual language. The Arcturians' method is to amplify coherence, not to shortcut accountability. So if you feel the pressure of a doorway, how should you navigate relationships? Keep curiosity. Be honest. Tell a trusted friend that you are experimenting with practices and that you are keeping a log. If you have a partner, invite them into a conversation about boundaries before you act. If you are in a position of professional responsibility, maintain those obligations. The lattice values those who can integrate new frequencies into existing responsible structures. There is also a meta test to watch for when evaluating groups. Does the group teach discernment? A well-structured node will encourage members to test protocols, to keep their external supports, and to exit gracefully if work is not beneficial. Radical transparency about what's being practiced and why is another hallmark of a healthy circle. When these standards are present, the human infrastructure matches the Arcturians' intention: long-term, steady, distributed coherence. Now, I will fold the narrative back into the hidden plan language the title demands.
What the Arcturians are hiding is less a secret plot than a strategic curriculum, selectivity in seeding, patient cultivation, and partnership with humans who can steward frequency on the ground. Their new plan changes everything only in the sense that it replaces erratic, short-lived interventions with a program of durable field building. If enough human nodes sustain coherent practice, the aggregate effect shifts probabilities. Cultural eating habits, approaches to healing, patterns of commerce, and local governance all respond to the energetic context in which they operate. That is why the scale of what they are doing matters, not because the Arcturians will snap a finger and everything transforms, but because steady human nodes tilt the field over time. You might be wondering about the timeline of such a shift. There is no simple answer. Some changes are immediate, personal decisions that clear a relationship or a career shift. Others are generational, visible only when small practices compound across networks. The Arcturians' plan is patient. It trusts accumulation. That patience is part of what they hide, the slow but relentless building of infrastructure until a tipping point becomes plausible. Before I invite you to the final practical step, I will reiterate the safety framework. These practices are complementary. They are not medical prescriptions. If you are managing mental illness, chronic health conditions, legal issues, or severe life disruptions, continue to work with trained professionals.
Use field practice as a supplement, not a replacement. If anything you experience grows destabilizing, heightened anxiety, dissociation, or impulsive drives, seek immediate professional support. The Arcturians' plan relies on stable human systems. Destabilized bodies are not helpful to anyone. If you have stayed with me this far, you are likely at a hinge point, curiosity that wants to be met with practical next steps. If you want the scaffolding of a coordinated human node that aligns with the Lattice's new plan, the member circle is offered as one pragmatic container. It is an invitation to regular practice, to shared facilitation, and to working with a small community that values steadiness. Membership is practical support for the long game. Weekly activations, recorded practices, small cohort rooms, ethical protocols, and administrative infrastructure to keep the rhythm. It is a place to train your nervous system in company, to receive feedback, and to be part of a coordinated effort to hold the field. If you are curious, here are the simple eligibility cues to watch for in deciding whether membership is right for you. Do you have some time to commit weekly? Do you value regular rhythm over one-time experiences? Are you willing to be transparent with a small group about what you are learning? Are you ready to test practices pragmatically? If yes, a member circle could help you convert moments of coherence into a sustained practice.
This is the moment where choice meets action. If you feel called to participate in a coordinated human node, if you want sustained grid support and to align explicitly with the Arcturians' new plan, then you can join the member circle. The circle is offered as an optional operational node, a place for weekly activations, ongoing transmissions, cohort practice, and infrastructure that supports long-term coherence. It will ask for a practical commitment of time and a modest fee to cover facilitation and administration. Sliding scales and scholarships will be available to preserve access. If you decide not to join, your path remains valid. The doorway is not a trap. You can practice independently, cultivate local nodes informally, and continue to document the phenomena you observe. The Lattice will still notice repeated fidelity. The path is not binary, it is a gradient. Membership accelerates support mechanisms, but it does not create exclusive access. You retain sovereignty. If you are ready now to mark your choice aloud, you can say the final optional commitment phrase that will serve as your personal threshold marker. I stand steady, I hold the field. Say it only if you mean it. Say it into your journal, type it into a private note, or whisper it by your bedside. Do not feel compelled to perform it publicly. This is about a private pledge to persistence. I will offer one final practical map for the next 30 days, whether you join a circle or not. Day 1. Continue the 2-minute morning return. Record 3 small synchronicities or shifts you notice. Day 7. Invite one trusted person into a 5-minute coherence check with you. Day 15. Reflect on the log and notice patterns. Do synchronistic events cluster around your steady practices? Day 30. Decide whether you wish to formalize your practice into a small node or to continue as a solo practitioner. These are modest experiments that produce real data. The Lattice responds to sustained behavior. Your fidelity is the currency. Remember the ethical posture through all of this. Hold curiosity, test diligently, maintain external supports, and respect consent in all fieldwork. Claim agency. The Arcturians are not puppeteers. They are collaborators who seed invitations. How you respond frames your life's next course. So what are they hiding? They are hiding a method, patient, selective, and designed to be stewarded by people like you. Their new plan will change everything only insofar as enough humans choose steady practice over episodic fantasy, and only if those humans build honest, ethical containers. If you elect to be part of that architecture, the practical work, 2 minutes a day, weekly nodes, ethical facilitation, will become your life scaffolding. If you decline, you still matter. Your presence will continue to shape your local field. If you want sustained grid support and to participate in the Arcturians' next phase plan, join the member circle.
The link is in the description. The invitation is optional. The experience will vary. This is not the only path. It is simply an operational option aligned with the hidden plan that the Lattice prefers: patient, ethical, and human-centered. Whatever you choose, return to this SETI center: presence over projection, authenticity over performance, and curiosity over certainty. The Lattice notices small, repeated fidelity. It rewards steadiness with alignment, not with guarantees. Your choices are yours. The doorway is not a trap. it is an invitation. Listen again to the subtle sensations behind your brow, to the warmth in your chest, to the small tingle at the base of your skull. Those are the ongoing tests, soft, patient, and precise. Keep a quiet log, share with someone you trust, and practice the 2-minute return. Hold your center like a lighthouse, steady, unflashy, luminous. This is the age of small, repeated acts made in concert. What the Arcturians are hiding is the classroom for those acts, a network of human nodes learning durability. Their new plan will change everything in the only way meaningful change ever does, by enabling consistent humans to show up day after day and hold a different tone until the local ecologies begin to answer. You always keep agency. You always choose. If you wish to be part of the circle that keeps time with this plan, the door is open. If you wish to walk alone, the lattice will still note your fidelity. Either way, the work remains the same. Be present, practice, and let the small, faithful things compound into something larger than any single one of us. I am here with you in the quiet of the doorway. Breathe. Return to your center. If you made the optional commitment, let it remain a private marker of your intent. If you join the member circle, bring your questions, keep your watchfulness, and remember the ethics of consent. If you walk your own path, honor the ordinary rituals that keep you steady. They are not hiding malice. They are hiding a plan because strategy requires patience. The plan will change everything only to the extent that you and others choose to hold a new tone over time. That is the promise and the responsibility. Thank you for listening. Choose with care. Hold steady. The lattice is watching, and the world will answer in time.